This is stage 5. Tid second pass, 3.3 miles, and it's still raining, and it's now more night. But hey, we have awesome LED light bars. They are amazing. Dad, do you know who sells them?
Let me think. Oh, I know. This is a great team called USUK Racing.
Yeah. I checked them out. The light output is phenomenal.
Those guys are awesome.
Yeah. So, I'm totally,
I think we should get some of that. Oh, wait, we did.
Yeah.
There goes Brian McNamara.
With no tail lights. In the mud. Hey. Armed. This is a... Thank you. Thanks. This is a Crest 200. Caution jump 50, left 3 plus late. No cut over kick jump. $15. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Crest 200. Caution jump 50. Left 3 plus late, no cut. Over kick jump. Repeat, left 3 plus late, no cut over kick jump. Right 4 minus. Left 6 over small crest 30. Left 5, 50. Right 5 plus over small crest. Long over small crest. Double caution tightens 4, stay out.
That's
Into left 3 plus small crest, no cut. Right 5 minus short. Yep, left 6 plus. Into right 6, tightens 5 minus over small jump 30. Small jump, which means slow down. Keep in. Okay. Crest, left 4 over small crest, 50. Left 5 plus, no cut, 50. Crest into right 6 over small crest. Right 5 plus, short,
Next.
into left 6.
Next.
Right 5 over crest 70. Right 4 plus over small crest off camber. Into crest 100. Small crest 70. Small jump into left 5. Right 5 plus. Into crest, into left 5. Into right 5, 70. Right 5, minus long, tightens over small crest. Into left 4 plus, short over small crest. Into right 6. Into left 6 loose, 30. Left 6 over small crest loose. Tightens opens over crest 70. Left 5 minus. Into right 4 over small crest, no cut. Small crest, right 5 minus short over kick 120. Right 5 over small crest 50. Turn right 5 plus over small crest. Into left 5 plus, very long, 250. Turn left 4 plus 120. straight left over small jump 70, right 6 plus 100. Left 5 minus slippy, into right 6 over kick 300. Repeat, right 6 over kick 300. Right 5 minus. Into small crest 120. Right 5 over small crest 50. Left 5 plus or very long. Repeat, left 5 plus very long. Into right 5 plus no cut. 30. Left 5 minus 100. Narrow bridge. Left 4 minus. Repeat, left 4 minus. Into right 5 opens over small crest 50. Finish 70. Right 4 plus. You done?
Well done.
You too? You there?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
I can hear you okay.
Hey. Yep, my speakers just cut out.
Okay, test 1, 2. Or is it you can't hear yourself either?
No, can't hear me or you.
Well, I can hear you okay.
Okay.
Just don't shout, okay?
Sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Heads up, the car ahead of you, the green Impreza has no taillights.
Yeah, we know.
We know. Thank you.